Explorers. I'm Pam Larikia, and this is episode number 153 of the podcast. It's the 5th of December, 2018, as I record this intro. So this week on the podcast, Anna Brown joins me. We're heading into the heart of December, so I invited Anna to join me to talk about navigating the holiday season through the lens of unschooling. So we dive into the idea of holiday traditions, setting up visits with extended family for fun, ways to support our children's developing relationships with their relatives, things we might do when someone challenges us about our unschooling lifestyle, and lots more. As a personal update, I think I mentioned it in the episode, I'm having lots of fun getting ready to host my extended family over the holidays. I like to have a list of games to play and things to do at the ready so that I'm not standing there on the spot trying to think of something. And I do enjoy planning the meal as well. I'm also having a lot of fun exploring and contemplating some gifts I think the kids will like. Things that I think connect with who they are, that will make them smile and feel seen, understood, and cared for. And as always, I want to thank everyone who has chosen to support my unschooling work like this podcast and my website through Patreon. And a big welcome to new patron, Kaylin Keach. Hi, Kaylin. I really do deeply appreciate all my patrons. Their generous support is vital to helping me freely share information and inspiration with anyone who's curious and wants to explore the fascinating world of unschooling. A couple of days ago, I actually sent out the December inspirational desktop wallpaper image. So there's a library of 8 of them now that you'll get immediate access to if you join at the $3 a month level or higher. So if you'd like to join my community of patrons and scoop up some great rewards along the way, check out the Exploring Unschooling page at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/exploring unschooling. And with that, let's dive into my conversation with Anna. Welcome. I'm Pam Larikia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm joined by Anna Brown. Hi, Anna.
Hello.
Now, Anna's been on the podcast before many times, so if you'd like to hear more about her unschooling journey, I will put links to her episodes in the show notes. This episode goes out the first week of December, and as we move into the holiday season, we realize that things can get challenging. You know, maybe you're deep into deschooling and you're questioning everything right now, including maybe your holiday traditions, to see how well they really fit into your family. Maybe you're the lone unschooling family and you're anticipating uncomfortable visits with extended families as the holidays start to gear up. And then there's also that general stress level that seems to build both in the people around us and even sometimes in ourselves as we feel that growing weight of expectations of the season, no matter how you celebrate. So this week I invited Anna to join me to talk about navigating the holiday season through the lens of unschooling. And first, I want to dive into the idea of holiday traditions, because I remember that aha moment when I realized that I didn't have to try and twist my family into all the holiday traditions that I and my husband, right, grew up with, right, trying to mesh 2 different families' traditions together. That everything truly was a choice. It was another layer I was peeling back with unschooling. Everything is truly a choice, even around holiday traditions. And when I had that realization, it felt so freeing. So I was wondering how that perspective unfolded for you, Anna.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge for me as well. You know, because I'm somebody that loves the holidays. I know not everybody does, but I get really excited.
I do too.
I love the lights. I love all of it. But having kids and especially attachment parenting and all the things that we did, like really changed things. You know, some things got a little bit more complicated and lots of things got a lot more fun because it was just so great. You know, it was just kind of multiplied. But I think kind of what we kept at our core was talking to the 4 of us. So we're a family of 4, and that was the priority, making sure that we kind of put everything through the lens of what do the four of us want out of any given holiday or any given tradition. And so just a little bit about us. So my husband and I grew up in the same town, and his parents are divorced. So we have three sets of parents, living separately, and siblings and extended family all in this one town. And for really the majority of our kids' lives, we lived in separate states, sometimes, 5 states away, sometimes a couple states away, but always, big drives or that type of thing. And then you'd get to the city and it's, oh, we're supposed to see everybody, And, when it was just David and I, like, that was not a big deal. We just pop around to people's houses and have the meal or whatever. But when you're considering little kids, especially, and other things, that changed things, because I really wanted it to be fun. I wanted to think about developmentally where they were, interest level where they were, all of those different pieces. And so we would just kind of, keep talking through what we were looking for and what we wanted out of it. And I would just be really careful too around family to keep my energy in a good place, so that I have the energy of my joy of the holidays, and, that's what we were protecting and doing and putting out there. And so it didn't seem very adversarial, because I know sometimes with people that have asked us questions about things, it can kind of get adversarial. And I think I had to be really careful about keeping my energy, in check. And I think another important, we would find a solution that worked great for a year and figuring out what happened, but realizing that it would also change. So we might find something that works one year for everybody, and then the next year it's different. Our sleep schedules are different. Someone's older, someone's, new babies come somewhere else, or we've got, these things to consider. So it was, for us, it was keeping it flexible and open and, just enjoying it. If there was particular traditions that we really wanted to keep sacred to us, like, we would just keep that with the four of us, like, make sure we were doing those particular things. Mm-hmm. And then enjoy seeing the extended family. So yeah, that's some of the stuff
that energy is such a big piece of it, I think, right? Because it helps not make it adversarial with other people as you're figuring things out, and what plans might work, won't work this year. That's another big piece. Not, these are never lines in the sand, like, this is the way it's going to be forever. This is just what's going to work for us this year. It's something I found really interesting. It was actually last week. So I was reading a book. I just finished a book called The Art of Community, and I highlighted this quote I wanted to share. So he wrote, "If you're stuck keeping your traditions exactly the same, then know that you're likely maintaining something that will grow less meaningful and appropriate for a community that won't remain exactly the same. A dynamic community needs dynamic growth in its rituals. All symbols and rituals serve their purpose for a time. They share people, communities, even nations, and time moves on." I love that idea. Time moves on. This is completely, not about families, but families are communities. We're trying to live in community with our children, not the parent child. Right. We are developing a community, and it's really true that we can get stuck in trying to maintain something just for the sake of maintaining it, rather than growing with us, right? Because if you're stuck in trying to maintain it, they become obligations, right?
Absolutely. And knowing the changes, if you take a big extended family, there's changes in every family. It's not even just about us. There's a new baby over here, or there's a divorce over here, or there's something happening here. So I love that idea of, keep the community as the forefront versus the tradition as the forefront. So in this case, keep the family and extended family as the forefront in those relationships,
Yeah. And like you talked about the four of you guys figuring out what's working for you guys each year. That's the same idea of what we do. We touch base. And if there's joy in doing the things that we traditionally do, we keep doing them, right? There are things that have developed into traditions for us that have lasted years. And even sometimes there might be something that continues to be meaningful to only one or two of us, but still that's worth it. We do our best to try and figure out a way to make that work, because that's just how we roll as a family. through any
Right.
interest or anything we choose to do. Traditions we take just kind of the same way, right? We try to help each other do the things that each of us wants to do. So, when we talk about looking at various traditions, it's not even just for this holiday season, right? It's around birthdays,
Yeah.
it's around summer holidays like Canada Day. It's around Thanksgiving, it's around all these kinds of traditions. And every time they roll around, I just do a light check-in with everybody, who's involved, because, maybe Lissy's not going to be in town for a particular holiday, or somebody's working. Like you said, some things come up. So I will mention what I'm thinking about for it, see if they're up to it. I'll ask them if they have anything they want to add to it. It's just kind of opening the conversation each time and checking in. So it's, this year we're doing Christmas Eve and we're hosting, and is that good? And, is there anything in particular you want us to do? And I'm thinking about them maybe doing this. Michael picked up a really awesome VR system,
Cool.
but, and we're having a blast trying it out. It's really mind blowing. And I love it, but I didn't want to say to everybody, oh, you can all come and check it out, until I checked in with Michael to make sure that he was comfortable with all sorts of other people using a system, which he was. And, that's good. But it's all that little bits of checking in just to make sure the way that we're envisioning it meshes with everybody else's vision, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the key is just understanding that everything is a choice, that we're making all these different choices, and that as opposed to that kind of weight of the have tos or the whatever. And just a really quick one from like Thanksgiving of this year. Thanksgiving's been kind of a tough holiday for me since my dad died a few years ago. And I was needing it to change up. And so last year we did something different, but my mom, who's 85, I guess now, she needed it to be the same. That, she needed the food to be the same and kind of the continuity to be the same. And there was a piece of me at first that was like, but I want it to be different. And then I was like, you know what, I can choose either way. So I knew she would, we could figure out and do it differently. But I got to the place of, you know what, I want to give this gift to her and we'll do this. And it actually turned out well. But I needed to kind of, change my head to realize you have a choice, Anna. You don't have to do it. So don't feel this burden of it, but then decide, do you want to or not? And I could have gone either way, but I think knowing you have the choice is just so empowering.
I love that point. And that reminds me, because over the years, I have worked through that so many times, right? Because when I'm handed something around traditions, whether it's weddings or, whatever kind of event that's going on, it can often be handed to me as an expectation, right? It's handed to me like, of course you do this. This is what you have to do. Right. But doing the work to understand their perspective and why it's important to them, and realizing that I can choose to do this for all sorts of reasons that are my reasons. They may think I'm doing it just because it's expected of me, but I've gotten to a place where I'm choosing it. And even though it looks no different to them, it's a completely different experience for me, right?
Oh, and my energy feels so different, and the whole of the event goes better, and all of that. So it's always about, our work. So I just think that's such an important piece with all of these different holiday things we'll talk about.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe there is a holiday tradition in our extended family that doesn't mesh well with us, yet they're expecting us to participate. So we've talked a little bit about that, about our shifting. So let's chat about ways that we can navigate those kinds of situations.
Yeah. So again, I definitely focus, the conversation's open, and I think about like their level of interest and comfort. And I would say, especially when they were younger. So, my kids are older too, like yours. So it's a little bit different now because we're having different kind of conversations. But when they were little, I had to do a little bit of that. Okay. I know kind of their tolerance level for this type of activity or that, and kind of take all those things into shape. And, for example, my oldest, she loved the holidays, still does, But larger crowds, bigger family gatherings had a lot of energy that was tough for her at times. And so what works for her is to, be involved, and she chats and she's busy and she's having fun, but then she needs to get away and have a little bit of space. So what I would do kind of going into either, someone else's house, or if we were having something at our house, was make sure we had that space for her. So if we were going to my parents' house or to a cousin's house, I would even sometimes check in. Is there a good spot where she and I can tuck away that doesn't, interfere with your plans, but gives us the space, and do some of that pre-work to know, because I could, I was with them enough to know, okay, she's getting to that point where she needs a little bit of space. And I would say, oh, hey, do you want to go play the game back in the thing? Or do you want to go read a book? Or you want to chit chat? And then she would be like, yes, and take that opportunity and go. So I would lay some groundwork about things like that, because I think sometimes we put a lot of expectations on young children to be at these very long, drawn out events that are not necessarily fun. And so I think that, understanding that interest level and comfort was a big piece of that. And sometimes we would find, if it was not a conducive environment, we would tag team, when they were little. So if it was something, one kid wanted to go and they were going to enjoy this caroling aspect outside, and the other one was like, I don't want to go caroling outside, or whatever the thing would be, we'd take turns and do pieces like that. I think sometimes we get stuck in this idea that, well, this is the tradition, this is the way this family does it, and it's really rigid. But what I found is that when I opened up the conversation, even with cousins or aunts or whatever, they were like, oh, no, we just want you guys to come. And, oh, yeah, we'll figure that out. And so there was I was putting some of that weight on it, that it needed to be just like it was. And I didn't want to upset them or, whatever. But when I was just honest about, well, we may not be able to be there for this long period of time, but we can do this, people were, of course, yes. And much more accommodating than I thought. So sometimes we get in our heads about that kind of thing, I think. And so I think it's important just to, be honest. And if you're keeping your energy in this kind of loving, light, inclusive place, I think people really respond to that. And because this has come up, I'm going to just mention really quick, sometimes there are, child-free events, and so for us, when the girls were little, we didn't really do babysitters, especially my oldest was not comfortable with that kind of situation. So, I would just look at that as, okay, what kind of an event is it? Like, say it was a work thing, did David want to go? Did we want to kind of tag team? Did we want to do something like that? And we would just work it out, and not put a lot of energy around wanting to change someone's party or tradition or whatever, just realizing it might not work for us this year. And I think that's an important thing you said a few minutes ago. Sometimes we think we project out for the next 10 years, or we'll never be able to do this. And oh my gosh, it changes all the time. And there were definitely holiday parties, work things where David and I couldn't go together when the kids were very little, but then they would be spending the night with friends a couple years later, and we could go, so it's just things change and evolve. And so we just kind of looked at that moment, what felt good to all of us then, and tried to work there.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, I was going to go with when it doesn't work for us. So I remember there was a time when it was very much Rocco's family's tradition that everybody get together Christmas Day after having gotten together Christmas Eve, and then getting together at lunch on Christmas Day. And we tried it for a couple of years, and the kids were really young, so they didn't quite, get the gifts and wanting to play with it and everything. But then eventually they got old enough that it didn't really work for us. It's like, we were out there late. We finally got home, slept, do Christmas morning, with the kids. And then you wanted us to come out again. And your energy piece, that was another big thing. So for me, it was really just about, I like to describe it as lightly holding my ground. Yeah. Because I'm not trying to convince them. That was a big piece, not trying to convince them to see my point of view and why we weren't doing something this year. Because that's really a conversation without a winner. Because if I'm trying to convince them, that's the opening for them to try and convince me
Exactly
why I should be doing it, right? And then it's just back and forth and round and round and round and round. So I learned, I don't have to have an expectation of them either to understand why we're not going to be doing X,
right.
Y, or Z, whatever it is, right? So I might explain with a quick sentence. I think I said, we're looking forward to hanging out together at home this year. The kids are really excited about their gifts and we want to hang out and play with them and do that. And that was it. And, really just sharing it nicely and lightly as a fact for them to take into account as they make their plans for Christmas Day. We're not going to be there,
Yeah.
It was just really important not to get sucked into feeling defensive about it. Right? Just to lightly share, this is what works for us. And then the other big piece is this year, for now.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
We don't know, right? And we're going to learn from this experience. Maybe we found that we missed, not seeing them or something, or like things changed up. They were getting along better with some cousins or something, and they really wanted to get together more often. You don't know. So to try and take what's going to work for us really well, we think this year does not define future years at all. So yeah, that was a really big piece for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we're just kind of moving through the possibilities here. Let's say we do have plans to visit with extended family. So how can we set things up to make that a fun experience?
Well, so I would definitely do some of that kind of getting the lay of the land, to make sure we knew where we could scoot away if we needed to. We would bring our handheld devices a lot because that's something we could easily do if things were not, kind of fun or interesting, or it's a lot of adult conversation. That's something they can kind of quietly do either in that space or we can find a different space. We would also bring games that we liked, like that were group games, so that we could share something that we enjoyed with the people there. So we kind of come with, armed with that kind of fun stuff and things that we enjoyed that would help kind of engage everybody and make those connections. And we would also, kind of prepare for the school type questions by having, we talk about, so as they got older, we would kind of talk specifically like, okay, we're probably going to get this, we're probably going to get that. But when they were younger, what we would do is more just to kind of refresh things we've been doing, like, oh, remember how we went to Great Wolf Lodge, or we went to this or did that, and gave them fun things to talk about, so that when those questions came up, they were like, oh, but we went to the beach and we did this and we did that. And so then it kind of gets that person starting and all of that. And I think another big piece of this that goes along with the energy piece is I really like to assume positive intent. And so while we can, as unschooling parents especially, can get frustrated with those kind of school questions, honestly, most adults just really don't know how to talk to kids at all. And so they just, that's the question that comes to mind. And the truth of it is, for 90% of kids out there, school is a giant chunk of their life. And so, it's really, there's no ill intent necessarily. It's really just trying to make conversation. And so if we can help have conversations in other ways, and maybe I'll just take this as a quick PSA reminder for all of us when we go to these events, instead of asking about school, if that's, if the niece or the nephew goes to school, find that little nugget of a movie or a book or something that they're interested in, because then we can kind of pave the way of how to have a conversation with this human being that has interests and all kinds of things they want to tell us that isn't related to school. So that'll just be the PSA for all the other young people.
I love that,
because I'm sure the question too.
Yeah, I always felt like I started doing that really early on, and I kind of felt like I was just planting a seed that there are other things to talk about. Like even like with the adults, I would, everybody's always asking, how's work? Like just an opening for complaining or whatever most often, right? So I would so what have you been doing for fun lately?
Yeah.
What are you interested in? What good movie or book did you read /see? just to opening up conversation about the other bits of life rather than the school and work pieces, which we're so ingrained in.
I know. And again, I don't think
so
it's
shocked.
still intent, it's just that's what we kind of get this rut of stuck in.
Yeah. So once you're talking about interest and fun, then, it just opens them up to starting those kinds of conversations with other people, with kids included too.
And I mean, I'm sure this has happened to you guys too. What's so interesting is, we might share, oh, we went to this observatory and we're looking at this. And then it sparks this interest in somebody that you didn't even know they had either. That they're like, oh my gosh, I love the stars, or I've done this, or this was my favorite thing. And so I love those, how those kind of conversations can develop. Because like you said, like school and work, they're kind of dead end, oh, it's fine, or oh, I like this, or oh, I hate this, or like it doesn't have that kind of digging in and learning more about each other. So I think
you learn so many other dimensions of people,
yes.
right? That you didn't even know existed. Oh, you're going to yoga, or oh, you like to take walks, or and what was always so funny was sometimes they would have to think about it, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm going to bring this other piece out. I'm just so used to those very typical questions and typical conversations when, you only see them often at holiday gatherings and stuff like that. So yeah, we did the same thing, and still do, just coming up with things that, I bet grandma would love to hear about, what we did on this trip or what we did here, just bringing stuff, like you said, bringing stuff top of mind that are going to work well in that particular situation. And you know what? That's a skill that's useful throughout life.
Absolutely.
Not even just with holiday gatherings, family gatherings, it's wherever you happen to be going. Yes. Let's top of mind prepare for what that environment's going to be like, who the people are going to be there, what kind of conversations happen there. Those are all good things to do before we go anywhere. The other thing we talk about is just kind of the expected flow of what was going to happen, right?
Definitely.
So, if a meal was involved, when that was likely to start, maybe even bringing some snacks if we knew that it was a time that was out of our routine, but they would not be happy. Oh, don't spoil your meal or whatever, right? So we would have little snacks so that, you could tide them over to that point. I was trying to think. I think there was one other thing. I think the other piece, when talking about when people start asking these questions, you were talking about not getting defensive, right? Thinking people, knowing people are coming from honest curiosity, if they're asking about homeschooling or stuff like that, and even if you suspect maybe they're not, they're just trying to put a little dig in, you don't have to rise to that, right? You can just take it honestly and answer honestly, because if they're just looking for a reaction, you're not giving to them. Eventually they just give up, in my experience, eventually. Maybe a few times.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, taking that time for myself just to shift to a place where I'm just going to lightly answer their question and know that I can change the topic, know that I can leave the conversation. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. Oh, I'm going to go check on the kids. Oh, whatever it is, if I feel like I want to leave a conversation, I'm welcome to. I'm not hostage to any of these situations or conversations. And the bringing games piece just made me laugh because I forgot to bring them at Thanksgiving. And I was just kind of stuck there. I was like, geez, once I was there, and the conversation was going where the conversation normally goes, and I couldn't just hey, let's go play Bananagrams or something. I was like, darn. That's why I'm glad at Christmas they're coming to our place. We have all our games lined up, and they came last year and they had a great time. Yeah. It's not that, and it was really funny. I ended up in a conversation about games earlier this week with a bunch of other adults that I don't really know, but we ended up talking about it, and And I was explaining how the games really are just a conversation piece, right? It's almost like side-by-side play that we talk about often with unschooling. Good conversations happen when you're not 100% stuck and focused on the conversation. When you're playing games and you can chat, it just helps break the ice too. And it helps the conversations go wider because they start kind of about the game and how you play the game. And then they just morph into other interesting things. So I think games are a great way to help things move along.
Yes. And for my kids too, it was fun for them to be able to explain how to play the game. Like it gave them a role in doing that.
We're more equal because we're all players, right? No matter our age, they can show their mastery of things, and the adults in their extended family can get to know them a bit better, seeing how well, they explain, how well they play, why they enjoy it. They get to see other dimensions of the kids rather than just not knowing what they do because they don't go to school. Okay, so let's pretend we're now there. We're at our parents' home, maybe at our in-laws or a cousin like you were talking about. So let's talk about ways that we can support our children and their relationships with their relatives, because that's kind of a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit about what we just talked about, I think, with kind of the preparing ahead of time, because like one of the things that I would do too was we talk about the flow of like what was going to be happening and where there might be opportunities to kind of connect and do the games connected. But also, I would share things about the people. So I might have information from Facebook or conversations where they got a new cat or they just went to the Grand Canyon or they, that type of thing. And those, I knew things, especially like a cat for my oldest she'd want to beeline to that person and be like, tell me about your new cat, and so just give them some of those little tidbits that maybe they wouldn't pick up because they weren't on Facebook at the time or they won't, that wasn't something that they knew about. So just like we want, these people to see our children as whole people, I think we can help present them as whole people too, versus the aunt or the whatever, that they have these interests and these things that they're doing, or they, ran a race or they did whatever. So, we would kind of talk about that and who we were going to see and, even funny stories or what we loved about them or things we had done before, so those were kind of conversations we'd have. Because again, we tend to have long car drives to these places. So we would talk about on the way. Now we live close to everybody, which has its pros and cons.
I love that idea of conversations about the people, because that was something that was really helpful for me, was to realize how much of my own expectations I was putting on it, right? So the relationship between my child and my parent, right? So I could have this dream relationship where they're like, this is what I would love, the kind of grandparent I would love my child to have, versus who my parent is.
Actually,
right?
Is, yeah.
So being able to realize how much of it was just my expectation that I was putting on it and that I was getting frustrated about, and realizing this wasn't my relationship to control, right? That I actually knew my parent quite well and I knew my child quite well, and I could help each of them just try to develop the kind of relationships that they were looking for. Like, what kind of relationship was my parent looking to have with my child? Like, what kind of grandparent did they want to be, and supporting that? And you know what? Maybe it's realizing that they didn't want to have the kind of relationship that I kind of dreamed that they would have. And, that was my processing and my sadness to work through, whatever it was. But instead, I could help them have the kind of relationship that they each wanted. I could even validate if my child wanted more, but my parent wasn't, or vice versa, right?
Yeah, definitely vice versa for us, I think, too, and I think, I just like that piece because, again, it's giving that kind of unconditional acceptance, which, we can give to everyone. It doesn't have to just be between parent and child and whatever. I mean, we can give that to the world and to the people in our lives. And so I think, helping to understand, because we kind of had both. We had the grandparent that was on the floor playing and excited and doing, and then we had one that really was not at all of interest,
Yep.
but they would have a conversation or ask some questions, and there was a way they like to talk about themselves. So if you knew those things about them, then you could have a conversation. And so I think, again, these are skills that are so helpful anywhere,
Yeah.
At work, school, college, wherever you're going, what you're doing. Like, these are just really important communication skills. So I just felt like it was all so valuable and valid, all these different types of relationships and these different types of interactions. And I guess I did want to touch on too with this piece, the food. So, because I think setting kids up for failure happens a lot around sleep and food. So we go to these really long events where maybe it's going over a nap, or they didn't get a nap because we had to drive somewhere, or they fell asleep and then they're tired, whatever, and food. And so I would bring the foods and snacks, and you might get a little grumble of, oh, it might spoil their meal. And, sometimes I would just go, or we could spoil the moment and everybody's screaming, or we can feed somebody, or we can just be light about it and whatever. But, for us, having those snacks and kind of known quantity foods, things they knew they liked, things they would have on hand, was just a really easy way to kind of ensure success, at a big family meal or a potluck or whatever.
Yeah. And often I would ask ahead of time. It's like, oh, what are you guys making? What are we going to have? And so I would get like the courses or what it was. And I'd chat with my kids, oh, there's going to be this, and this. And, they found out, okay, I know I like that bit, and I know I like that bit, and I'll be able to eat this, yes. So that, or we brought something, it's like, oh, I'll bring something too. We bring a dish that we know for sure that
exactly we did that
like.
Yeah.
So there's at least something.
And sometimes we would eat ahead of time, because I'm particular about what I eat too. So I'd eat ahead of time, and then I'd just be able to kind of enjoy little bits and not have it be like I'm hungry and not finding food that I can eat either, because I'm not good when I'm hungry. So just good to know.
I know, right? No, that's perfect. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so finally, let's brainstorm things we might do if, in the midst of our visit, someone's decided to challenge us about our unschooling lifestyle. Or, you've got that negative relative who just keeps coming back to it. They don't want to let go.
Yeah. Well, so we'll just put out the classic, pass the bean dip straight because sometimes that's what you need to do is just, move right through it and don't even acknowledge it. But really what I found is that kind of my joy and confidence about our life and our family really set the stage. So, I think it's just a good thing to kind of check your energy when you go into that and be in that proactive space of sharing, oh my gosh, we had the best week, or we had so much fun, or we took this trip, or we did this thing. And it's just, that energy is contagious, and that starts conversation. So you can kind of nip some of that kind of before it gets there. But also, if we've already gotten there and it's already happened, I kind of go through a couple different thought processes. So first of all, like, who is this person and what is their interest? So if somebody asks a college question, say like, well, how are they going to get into college? I have to do a quick assessment. Okay, is this someone truly interested? Because I have a big, long answer, for the person that's really interested, and we can actually have a conversation about it. Or is it a person that's just, that's just kind of the party line that they're wanting to say. And then I can just say, oh, thanks for your concern. And yeah, we've got it covered, and pass the bean dip. And then, move on from that. So you don't have to engage, but it doesn't have to be a strong energy thing. You can just kind of let that energy wash over you. And I think that's just really important. They can come at you with all of that negative energy, but you can just like smile and let it wash over you, because why you're doing what you're doing. The relationship you have with your kids. So you don't have to take any of that negativity from people that don't have a clue, that are just looking in from the outside. I also like the turnaround. So basically that's like where so let's say we'll stick with the college example. So, oh, well, where did you go to college? And, oh, tell us what you loved about it. Like, what was your favorite part about it? And sometimes it's a really positive, like they're like, oh, well, I loved this. And I had this cool professor and I, met the person I'm going to marry, or I did whatever. And it's like, oh, we can get excited about that. But what's funny is a lot of times I'm still paying off the student loans and I'm not doing anything with the degree and whatever. And then you're kind of going, okay, so why are we doing that? But whatever it is, I think turning it around to just make it a conversation versus this, like, you're in the spotlight, you're being quizzed now.
Yeah.
So I found that to be really helpful. And actually it's a tool that, I gave to the kids as they got older, because, as they're out in the world, they're fielding these questions on their own. And, I would just tell them, just ask them, say, oh gosh, yeah, could you share what you loved about college with me? I'm still considering my options and figuring out what I want to do. And, just turn that around versus feeling like you have to give this person sometimes this was like people on an airline with my other daughter, with my oldest daughter, like, this person that does not need to know your personal plans. So turn that around and just have a conversation, when it's parenting. So the other thing, so you kind of have the unschooling piece, but you also at family parenting issues come up, because for some reason, I think when we're in that family environment, people feel free to speak their mind with what they want to be happening. So, again, it's what I can control is who I am, and my energy. So I go back to positive intent. This person is just, they're sharing something that feels important to them. Maybe it was how they were raised. Maybe it's how they raised their child. So they're feeling slightly defensive that, I'm doing it a different way. So I can kind of, see them and hear them and validate them. And, I can sometimes choose to explain why we might be making a choice, be it around bedtimes or not forcing hugs, which can come up, in families, because I'm very much a body autonomy person. And so that we did run into a little bit of that at first, like, grandma's coming and I'm like, oh, she does look like she's not ready for a hug right now. Or, let's check in with her. And then, sometimes that would cause rubs, but I could just kind of quickly say, oh, I want her to be able to decide, when someone's touching her and that kind of thing. And so sometimes I need to explain, and sometimes you can deflect. So you can kind of gauge that in the moment, but just don't feel defensive. That was the key for me. Just don't, it's not, they're just saying whatever they're saying. I can just let that wash over me, even if they mean it as an attack, even if they mean to try to say something that they think, I don't know, will hurt me or whatever. I get to choose how I feel and what I do with that information. So that can just, wash over me. I
was going to say, I think when we feel like that, feel that as an attack, I think, and we feel defensive and we get pulled into it, I think sometimes that's because on some level, like I know for me, what I worked through, on some level, I still wanted their approval, right? Yeah. And so I had to we just wanted to convince them to see what we see, because we've done all this work, right? But it's that realization we can't control them, same as we don't want to control our children, right? And we don't want them to control us. Like we want to make our own choices, right? But to turn around and trying to convince them to make the same choice as us, like we talked about earlier, you're back stuck in that circular conversation that's not going to go anywhere. And that bringing that energy that we're very comfortable with the choices that we're making, and we're just living these choices with you. But to do that processing, before, to get to that place where we can release the need for their approval, that's a mindset shift for us, right? Absolutely. And that we can disengage. We don't have to get pulled in. And that positive energy, I think, is so helpful. I think on another level too, people might worry that I don't want to be faking it, right? Because sometimes we are feeling challenged about something's going on with their kids or whatever. But what I came to realize was this wasn't the place I wanted to talk about it anyway. These weren't the kinds of answers that I wanted to get, right? I wasn't going to be asking for their help because they're going to be giving me conventional answers. They're going to suggestions, advice, etc. So I would save those kinds of things for people, whether it was online unschooling groups or, conferences, whatever groups that we had locally. Those were the kinds of answers I was looking for. Those are the kinds of the perspective that I wanted to work through these issues. So I would not open up those conversations in an environment where all the advice was going to be conventional anyway, because then I would just feel bad about anything that they said, feel the need to, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
It's not the right place, right?
Kind of important piece about that is because we have something going on. There's some kind of bedtime struggle, or there's a co-sleeping thing, or there's whatever. And we know this isn't really the audience. But when you bring a problem to someone or to a group, like they want to solve it.
Yeah.
So, really, it's not like they're attacking or doing. They may be. If you bring it to them, they're going to say, "Oh, well, we just put them in the crib," or "Oh, well, we didn't have that problem because we just locked the door at 8:00 and they couldn't come out," or whatever. But really, you kind of initiated that by bringing that problem there. So you're right. Like I never brought those kind of things there. I kept it high and fun and what we're doing because I have friends and groups and other things that can help me with a co-sleeping issue or with a nursing issue or with a thing that might not fit in that group. So just keep in mind that again, they're trying to help and it may not be delivered in a way that feels good. And so those conversations, we just avoid it altogether. But one other thing I wanted to say too, that we often did, and I think you guys did too, is we would use these interactions as conversation, like fodder for conversation on the way home. So much. Be like, oh, Auntie X thinks that we should clean our plate, and so how'd you feel about that? Or what'd you think? Or whatever. And then, have a conversation and I might share something from my childhood, like why I don't like that, like why that doesn't feel good to me and whatever. And we also can talk about that, she came from a different time and this was important to them. And this is what she was taught from her family. Why do you think that was? So we would just enjoy that kind of sociological, just like looking at it all.
Yeah. It wasn't ever about dissing them as a person, right? No. At all, because it's about understanding them as a person, how they came to develop that belief, how they're interacting with people, it just all of that. It was all more learning and how we can engage, how we can not engage, how we can choose to not go next year or next time, what we can do when we're feeling uncomfortable, making up plans for next time. It was all great fodder for conversation, but it's a really important conversation to have though, too, right? It's not like, oh, we finally got through it. I don't even want to talk about Thanksgiving again till we have to do it next year or whatever, because that's how we learn, right? By process.
I feel like the light conversations actually, what is the word? Like maybe kind of take some of that weight away because we're not like leaving it like, oh, we've just been attacked or it's been a horrible thing. We're just able to say, oh my gosh, I loved this or I love that. And we talked about the things we enjoyed and we talked about the things that were challenging and what we could do differently. But I feel like, again, just that, and it brought the four of us back together. It got back to our unit versus, this kind of extended family, which maybe felt a little swirly at times, or a little challenging.
I think that processing is so important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. Or else everybody, so often in your mind, when you don't talk about it, you can start spinning on the things that didn't work well. If somebody made some random comment that we took defensively, if we keep it inside, we'll keep thinking about it and keep thinking about it. And that's the one thing we'll remember out of all the, 10 other things that went great that we could have enjoyed. Focus on the negative. Yeah. Until we process it And then we just get some validation. Oh yeah, what a crappy thing to say. We get some validation from the rest of our family. Maybe we get some insights from them. The conversation also turns to all the good things that we enjoyed. Yes. And yeah, we can come away from it with a much, much better perspective on what happened. Some more wisdom, some more learning, some more everything about it when you actually process it, then hold it like a rock inside. Right.
Right. I think so too. And again, that piece about, just showing kindness towards the people that may be in a bad place, because it just reminded me of, when the kids were little, unrelated to even family events, but family events and playgrounds and whatever, we would talk about, when we're hungry, when we're tired, when we're upset about something, when we're feeling pressure from somewhere else. And so, they would be very little and somebody would be upset and they would be like, I think they probably need a snack, I think you're probably right about that. But what I love about that is that observation isn't that they're a bad person or they're mean or they're a bully or they're whatever. It's, they've got some kind of need that needs to be met. So I loved, and so we would just continue that with family and playgrounds and friends and whatever, so that we're always looking at people, as human beings, as opposed to just this judgment.
Yeah, no, I love that piece too, because these are the same kinds of conversations we would have after, they spent time at a friend's, they went and visited at a friend's, and parenting is different. Things are different. Expectations are different, Again, it comes back to, unschooling is life, really, right? This is how we engage when we're out and about in the world and having conversations, and seeing how other families do it, other kids, just helping our kids process and learn through all that. We don't turn that off just because it's family now. And so often, that can be a step for us to take, right? Because we feel our position in the family and we're like, oh, okay, I'm this little girl and I'm just going to be quiet and do what I'm told. And we're going to do everything as good as we can so that we can get out of there and be accepted or whatever, but to bring our whole of us into our family as well, our extended family.
And who we are now, because I think that's so critical, for us to talk about, and everybody listening, that so often when we're around our family, our extended family, it does just send us straight back to being a teenager or to being in some kind of adversarial piece or whatever, or this power differential. And to just realize, we're grown adults and we have families and we can interact as equals and family and on this place. And so I guess the biggest piece I want to leave with people is it's for me, it's been so much about the energy I bring into the situation, and holding that loving space and, setting the stage, because the minute I start to feel defensive or I start to feel that kind of power differential, things just go south. And I have done it many times, gotten defensive or, felt attacked or whatever. But what I love is that I know now that I can make that choice at any moment, even if I've started to feel defensive, even if I've started to, feel like, wait a minute, this is not fair, this is whatever. Like, I can just let all of that go in a split second and change back to, but who do I want to be right now? And I love my family and I love the choices that we're making. And we feel good about what we're doing. And then I can radiate that. And it really does just change a room. It really does. So like, that's the work we can do before going into these holiday situations that can just really change it and make it, better for all of us.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a great way to end. And that's my experience too. The energy is everything, it really is. And over the years, they see it, for some of our extended family, it was never about understanding what we were doing. It was about, we brought great energy and we were always so happy when we saw them. And over the years, they started to see the value and all that.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me, Anna. That was so much fun.
Always happy to. And happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, Lissy. I'm in my office / Lissy's bedroom, and I put the tree.
I love it.
Hey, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.